Good evening, I'm Jason Vio. Katarina is away tonight. Here's what's making news right now.
Road to reconciliation is long, and the first part we are trying to answer with this display is understanding the truth.
Unfortunately, I'd love to say otherwise, but I think starting in January, we'll see prices start to climb again.
We kind of come into the year with a bit of a swagger and stuff like that, so if I hear teams want to beat us, that's great.
Thanks for joining us. Across the country today, people took the time to mark the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, reflecting on the impact of church-run and government-funded residential schools. The CBC Windsor's Jennifer LaGrassa was in Ojibwe Park today, where dozens gathered.
This is a traveling song sang for the children who were forced to attend residential schools. It was one of many traditional songs performed at Ojibwe Park this morning to mark the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. The day is federally recognized in remembrance of children who died and those who survived residential schools. It's also about the generational trauma that continues to exist. Songs were weaved throughout the ceremony, allowing for moments of reflection in between hard truths.
I'm here today because my mother survived the Mohawk Institute, just barely. The first day of school, she couldn't speak any English. So they took a broom, they put it over a well, they suspended this little 5-year-old, and she hung there until she could say please and thank you in English.
The day was spent listening and learning, sharing Indigenous culture.
What makes it traditional is really the fry bread. Like a lot of natives, that's how we make our tacos. We make the dough and we fry it. The fry bread is my mother, it's her recipe. She got it handed down from her mother, and her mother got it from her mother.
And for some, the day was about discovering who they are.
We found out that we have a Mohawk background, and I don't really know anything about my native heritage. So I thought today that I would come and just listen to the stories.
Those stories shared today required confronting the trauma Indigenous people continue to live with.
I feel like a lot of people think residential schools, the impact was like a million years ago when it wasn't. Like, there's so much trauma even now that's just, it's a common thing, It's not that residential schools ended and everything was better. It's not just like, oh, it's elders that suffered through this. No, it's like generational,
Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Windsor.
The Indigenous education lead at the local Catholic school board has curated an exhibit at John R. Park Homestead. It's a record of the conversations she's had with educators and staff about what the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is. It will be open between 11 and 6 this weekend, and here's a look at what to expect.
The road to reconciliation is long, and the first part we are trying to answer with this display is understanding the truth. Right? So that's really what this is about, and that's kind of where we are on our road to reconciliation, is getting those true facts, that true history straight. And once we do that, then we can build a relationship with our First Nation communities. And from there, only when we know the person, only when we know our community, can we begin to take steps towards reconciliation. It's a culmination of conversations that we have had with staff, educators, community, all around the understanding of what National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is. And basically, there are 21 questions that encapsulate questions that our colleagues had, and they're the answers and images that support it. All of the photos are authentic. All of them are produced with care, making sure that they align with the question, and they also have a bit of provocation to them. So not only do they support the answer to the question, but they also lead to more questions. Lots of questions were, where are we now? How many graves have been discovered, and what are our next steps? Also, with the Pope visiting in the summer and the apology with many of the Métis First Nations and Inuit people who attended, there were questions about What's next with that? What about the apology, and where should we be looking to for more answers?
Here at the Homestead, we've always blended human history with natural history. We don't live apart from our environment. We know that we live in it and with it. And we're expanding the story that we tell. Primarily, we've told the early settler story for a long time to tell a more full history of our region. The early settler knowledge, for many of them, this was a new world, a new locale, was shared, and their survival and success was only because of that knowledge shared and fostered by local Indigenous people and populations. Because this building has been open for just over a year now, we find that whatever's on exhibit draws them in, holds their attention, sparks those conversations. And we feel that this one, particularly in this time where awareness is growing and interest, I feel, is growing. And as Darlene mentioned, you know, that questions asked and information shared help to build those relationships.
And support is available for anyone affected by residential schools. You can call the 24-hour National Crisis Line for access to emotional and crisis referral services. That number is on your screen, and it's 1-866-925-4419. A protest is taking place this hour at Windsor City Hall. People in Windsor drawing attention to what's happening in Iran. Those protests are sparked by the death of Mahsa Amini while in police custody. Amini died following arrest by morality police for unsuitable attire earlier this month. This afternoon, I caught up with one of the local events organizers of the protest. We've agreed not to name her because she's afraid of what could happen if she returned to Iran.
This reignited our anger for the human rights. We always had that anger and that sadness, but because of the Iran situation, we never be able to like having protests or anything like that. But this death was really weird to all people in Iran, and I think this reignited the protest again. Nowadays, they shut down the internet on Iranian people so that the world cannot hear their voice. I think this can show that we don't have freedom in Iran. We cannot speak about the basic human rights in Iran. For example, in Canada, if you don't agree with one rule or one thing, you can talk with people or you can show your disagreement, but in Iran it's not possible.
The federal government is dropping all COVID-19 travel measures at borders starting tomorrow. It means the ArriveCan app will be optional. Travelers, regardless of citizenship, will no longer need to provide proof of vaccination when entering Canada, but the United States will still require that proof of vaccination to enter that country. People entering Canada won't have to undergo any testing before departure upon arrival either. Also, travelers won't be required to wear masks on planes or trains. And the puck is set to drop on a new season for the Windsor Spitfires. Tomorrow night is the season opener at the WFCU Centre. The Spits were one game away from getting to the Memorial Cup last year, and they've got their eyes set on making the championship run this time around.
To win. I mean, that's the goal here. We want to win every game. We want to be in every game. We're at home, you know, and last year we made this a tough place to play in. We won 21 of the last 22 games here. We want to continue to roll that over. That was the message sent last year, and we were able to do that. So I think just getting off on the right foot here, everybody getting in the game and trying to get that first win, and we're excited for the opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. I think every team you want to play on, it has to be competitive, and everyone in there has a competitive mindset. And, you know, we're hungry to win this year, so we're going to go out there every day, do our best to win a championship.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, you know, you always want to put yourself in a position to be a team to beat. You know, you kind of come into the year with a bit of a swagger and stuff like that. So, you know, if I hear teams want to beat us, that's great. You know, I tell them bring it on because, you know, we're not going away.
Yeah, I think that this year's team has a lot of potential. As of now, we're still waiting on the returns of Wyatt Johnston and Matt Maggio from NHL camps. It would obviously be great to have them back for the season, but even if we do, it likely won't be in time for that home opener. So while they're gone, the youngsters are going to get a chance to play in prominent roles, and I think they'll be up to the challenge. Oh, it's great. I mean, I can't tell you how excited I was to be there for the entire playoff run last year. The atmosphere in the WFCU Center was absolutely electric, the entire playoff run really, and I say we do it again this year.
Hurricane Ian has made a second landfall, this time in South Carolina, not far from historic Charleston. Officials say the storm could produce life-threatening floods. Georgia and North Carolina are in danger as well. Ian made landfall in Florida on Wednesday, and the extent of damage there is stunning. From the city of Fort Myers, CBC's Paul Hunter has this report.
Yeah, this is Fort Myers, one of the worst hit places from Hurricane Ian. We saw the boat over there. Obviously lifted up and out of the water, but there's a reason. There's that one boat, and that's right over here. This was a large marina, and it is a shambles. I was just chatting with somebody that came here to survey the damage, and they're saying people in Fort Myers have never seen anything like this. They've seen hurricanes before, but never anything like this. And they say it's just, the city's gone in a sense. Buildings obviously still stand, but the infrastructure is gone. All the, the power is gone. Everything can't be just repaired, but it's got to be rebuilt. This was the marina, but it gets even worse up here. Let's take a quick jog up. These are monster-sized boats that were just picked up, thrown against everything else. It is a small example of the circumstance in Fort Myers right now. People are walking around with their jaws agape, like nobody can believe it. There was a lot of people here thought that the storm was going to hit Tampa, right, which is where we've been. And so they didn't really expect it to just take that turn and come in, but it did. And when it did, this, again, is a tiny example, but this is the result. At this point, this marina, this is why people are so stunned. It's just the force. It just came and it threw things. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Fort Myers, Florida.
And starting tomorrow, Ontario's minimum wage is increasing by 50 cents to an hourly rate of $15.50. The PC government made the promise of a wage boost in April of this year. Some labor groups, though, still say it's not enough considering this year's 7% inflation rate. And high inflation can have an almost immediate effect on people's cost of living. And students in Canada have not been spared either from high grocery bills. Campus food banks in several provinces are seeing a surge in demand. Julia Wong looks at the challenges and the ways some students are getting help.
Talova Toole arrived as an international student last November.
I just moved here with just 2 luggages, leaving everything back home. And it was winter and everything was so expensive.
Some campus food banks across the country say they've seen demand soar. Inflation, rising tuition, and higher living expenses means money for lots of students is tight.
The stress is off the scale for them. We try to create an environment where they can focus on their academics, but if they're hungry, they can't do that. In the past, they might have reached out to family and friends for help, but everybody is feeling the pinch.
So schools are getting creative, adding buses to take students to cheaper grocery stores.
We're also increasing our grocery bus program. So we have a grocery bus that takes students from this area, which has some of the most expensive grocery stores in the city, to further down where there are cheaper and more varied grocery stores.
They're expanding breakfast programs. Food pantries filled with fresh fruit, dairy, and other snacks are also popping up, so students can grab what they need when they need it.
I mean, it's great. I think the timing of this, worked out really well for students. I don't think it could have came at a better time, to be honest with you. It's allowing students to save a little bit money at the grocery store by being able to come to our care cupboards and grab, a quick bite to eat.
As for Toole, she is now a volunteer at the campus food bank because she knows what it's like to be hungry.
It kind of gives you a sense of uncertainty, and your mental health takes a toll.
A toll these innovative programs hope to address by meeting students where they are. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
And you may have also noticed the change in gas prices. It peaked back in June, hitting $2.14 a liter. We checked out the lowest price this year, and that was $1.32. One expert says we'll see prices on the rise again, and it's already happening today, anywhere from $1.46 to $1.59 in Windsor.
There's been 2 major refinery outages in the U.S. or in the Midwestern U.S. and with one of the 2, Toledo, is not supposed to come back on stream until at least January. They just did some temporary layoffs 2 days ago.
Meanwhile, he says diesel fuel remained high while gasoline prices fell over the past couple of months due to a very high demand for diesel fuel. He says the prices of regular gasoline dropped because the refineries geared up to produce diesel fuel, and since gasoline is a byproduct of diesel, there was sufficient gasoline to meet that demand. But Pasco says gasoline will be going up again. He says there may be a lull in December, but prices will rise in the new year. The temporary relief on a provincial gas tax that ends on December 31st. Russia has proclaimed the annexation of 4 provinces its troops hold in Ukraine. Vladimir Putin signed the decrees in Moscow. Putin said the area's people would be Russian compatriots forever, but even as he celebrated with his regional allies, Ukrainian forces there advanced, reportedly surrounding a key Russian stronghold. Ukraine now says it will seek to fast-track membership in NATO. In the region itself, dozens of civilians died in an apparent Russian missile attack. Reports say they were traveling in a convoy to deliver supplies to relatives in Russian-held territory. And Canada and the U.S. have both imposed new sanctions on Russia in response to the annexation announcement. They target firms and leading individuals. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly was in Washington today, where she and Secretary of State Antony Blinken denounced Russia's move and the regional annexation votes that preceded it.
The pre-orchestrated outcomes of these referenda have no legitimacy and will never be recognized.
This territory is and will remain Ukrainian, and Ukraine has every right to defend its land, to defend its people, and to take back the territory that Russia has seized from it.
Still to come here on CBC Windsor News Live at 6, your weather forecast coming to you in a new way. You won't want to miss that. That's coming up right after the break.
Jam.
An exciting time here at CBC Windsor. Joining me for the first time on our show, CBC's Josiah Sinanen. You've probably heard him, though, already on Afternoon Drive on CBC Radio 1. Our meteorologist, Colette Kennedy, is still off for a little while, and we've had Dahlia Ashry doing our weather from Toronto. Now, for the first time ever, bringing in Josiah to do that for us as well. So welcome.
Yes, thank you so much, Jason. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so for those who haven't heard you on Afternoon Drive or don't know a lot about you, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I actually moved here from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. So flew on over and I've been settled in the Windsor Essex lifestyle, and I've been loving it so far. Been here since about February.
Awesome. Speaking of loving it, the weather is looking pretty nice this weekend. What can you tell us about that?
Beautiful, beautiful weather. Let's take a look at that 5-day forecast. Tonight we are going to see that fall low come in around 9 degrees. Currently it's about 17. Clear night across the county. Tomorrow set up for a lovely Saturday, high of 20. It's been a little bit since we've seen that 20-degree mark. I might have to get rid of this fall layering, but we'll see. Beautiful day for a bike ride or exploring. Some cloudy periods tomorrow, but great temperatures, as I mentioned. Low of 8 in the evening. And Sunday through Tuesday, we're seeing typical seasonal weather. Clear skies, highs up to 19 degrees on Tuesday, and nightly lows of 5 degrees on both Sunday and Monday. Gotta love those lower degree evenings. Makes it a little easier to sleep. No precipitation these upcoming days, although we are seeing a slight chance of showers later next week. And Jason, speaking of perfect fall weather, the monarch butterflies at Point Pelee thought so as well. I captured this video last weekend at the tip of Point Pelee. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but on the National Parks Twitter account, they have been doing a daily update on how many monarchs are at the tip. So this was just yesterday. Only 2 monarchs observed at the tip that evening. That is a huge span difference, because just before this it was 5,600 2 days before that. So they all decided, you know, the conditions are right, we're going to do our migration to Mexico. And this photo you're looking at right now is actually them roosting. So they kind of choose a tree, they all get together. I don't know if you've seen that before.
I haven't. Roosting.
Roosting, that's the term. So they look kind of like dead leaves, but those are the monarch butterflies.
There we go.
I'll send you off on your weekend with my favorite shot. I took this last weekend at the tip. A little close up for you there, Jason.
Wow, that's a great photo. It looks like you had a great time with the monarch butterflies.
I
And to
sure
think,
did.
2 now down from 5,600. They all just
right.
went packing.
I know, you kind of wonder if it made a sound when they did that.
Yeah, I think we did it earlier. Whoosh,
That's right.
all at once, and it'd be phenomenal to see. But
It would
you
be.
captured some really great stuff.
Thank you very much, Jason.
Well, still to come here on CBC Windsor News, we'll share how this country is marking the National Truth and Reconciliation Day. That's coming up next. In Ottawa, the children who died in this country's residential school system were honored, and those who survived it urged all Canadians to commit to reconciliation year-round. The CBC's Marina von Stackelberg reports.
A memorial cloth more than 50 meters long with the names of thousands of children. They were forced to attend Canada's residential schools. They never came home. Tiny shoes laid side by side, now a symbol of those lost children.
Without the advocacy and the contributions of survivors, September 30th would be just another day in the calendar.
The schools were funded by the Canadian government and run by churches. Ripped from their families, children suffered physical, mental, and sexual abuse. Thousands didn't survive. That trauma is still felt.
Residential school intended to assimilate us and destroy our culture, our language, and our way of life. We are still here. We will survive.
Leona Cutfeet's father struggled with addiction. He was a residential school survivor, but she never knew.
When he died, the kid that he rode with to the Mohawk Residential School made a post and said, "I remember I rode with Michael Matthews." That's how I found out. And now this day means so much to me. Yeah, it's healing.
On a day where non-Indigenous Canadians are called on to learn and listen.
I'm an immigrant to Canada. I get to reap the benefits of a system that does not own the land and was built upon it. And I think I've learned a lot.
The reason that racism exists, towards the Indigenous people is because of pure ignorance. It's a matter of stepping back and being willing to learn a little bit more about the history of our people, and the true history of Canada.
Survivors say this day is a hopeful sign Canada is beginning to acknowledge its past.
People are more open to talk and people are getting there, and that's really hopeful for me and for my kids too, like that they're not going to grow up the way I did where it was taboo to talk about anything like that.
Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
And you can find a lot more on our coverage on the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on our website, cbcnews.ca and cbc.ca/Windsor. That's where you can find news from us anytime. Thanks so much for watching. We're on social media as well. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The Rick Mercer Report is coming up next. Have a great night and have a great weekend.